Clout 941. We're here with State Representative Doug Holder, and now we're going to talk a little bit about some campaign issues before we get to the actual issues involving the electorate. First of all, Doug, one of the things that I'm curious about is we just saw an extraordinary amount of money spent in the Republican primary in the Nancy Dieter-Mike Grant race, and then in 2006 in your race against Dave Shapiro, both campaigns spent a lot of money. And around the state, people, the campaigns are hundreds of thousands of dollars are being spent in these state representative and state senate races, and yet these are jobs with salaries that are very low. They're like $30,000-$35,000 a year. Why are people so impassioned to spend that much money in races like this?
Well, I think, first of all, campaigns are extremely expensive these days because people have become so competitive. When you get into a campaign, I think that the candidates want to do what they need to do in order to get their message out. And certainly the best way to get your message out is to be able to knock on doors and do all your grassroots process, but you also have to spend time on television, which is extremely expensive. You have to put mailers in the mailbox. You have to make sure that the people hear what your message is. Now, in our situation, we just honestly, and I know it sounds a little light and fluffy, but we really had the opportunity to run for office and felt that it was the right thing to do for this community. We wanted to do it. We had the ability to do it, so we raised a lot of money in order to get that message out and make sure that we were elected.
Sort of the last nuts and bolts election question is the papers have made a lot about the fact that you guys both have a lot of money in your race, you and your opponent, and the fact of how much of your own personal amount of money are the two of you going to spend. Sam Rosenfeld, I know, has put in a nice chunk of money himself, and so have you. Where are you at with that? I mean, do you anticipate having to spend as much money of your own as you had to in 2006?
Well, it's a good question, certainly. And this time around, we really have not put our own personal money into the campaign, in my campaign. My opponent has. He's put a substantial amount, about 50% of the money that he's raised was his own money. And I certainly don't fault him for that. I mean, I think that he's caught up in the competitiveness of this race. You were talking earlier about just the simple numbers, and the statistics of the district are not very favorable for him. Therefore, he feels that he needs to put his own money in. Now, something also that we have to take a very close look at is that the money that he's put into his race is also a loan. There's a big difference between the two.
Because you can take it back.
You can take it back. If people donate money to his campaign and at the end of the race he feels that he doesn't have a shot and wants to pay himself back, he can pull that money back out, certainly with restrictions that are guided by the state. But we didn't do that in 06. When I decided to do partial self-funding, I decided to invest that money into the race because I felt that it was investing in our community, which I find to be a very important thing if you have the opportunity and the ability to do that.
Okay. Now let's get to some of the issues in the campaign.
Great.
One of the criticisms that Sam Rosenfeld has leveled against you is what he said is you had gotten 3 bills passed in this past legislative session that you sponsored. He referred to them as Mickey Mouse bills.
Sure.
And I know that you took personal offense to one in particular. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, there were actually several bills that we authored, and one of them, quite frankly, was for veterans to be able to come back from Iraq and have funding for their higher education. And there's nothing Mickey Mouse about that. First of all, I don't think Disney would like the fact that he keeps using Mickey Mouse as a negative term. But secondly, it just, it certainly is very disrespectful, I think, to our troops. And not only our troops, but we sponsored all different types of legislation that deals with insurance for children. We a bullying bill, which I'm sure you're very familiar with in your career. But the 3 bills that we authored that were signed by the governor into law this year were bills that really create, one creates a tremendous amount of money in our tourism, because it has to do with a diving situation where we sink decommissioned military vessels, and we're making it into a park around the state of Florida, like the Jones Golf Trail just north of us. But there are other bills that we've been a part of that are also very important. One was a bill that has to do with impaired practitioners and medical students, nursing students, giving them the opportunity to become well before they get to the point to where they have to try to work with our general public in the medical realm, and maybe make some mistakes because they were too afraid to admit their impairments. And those are really the main things that were offensive. Also, we had a CPA bill that was written into law that was a very specific bill about the licensure, which was very serious because we were losing our CPAs to other states that are surrounding Florida because they have a different licensure law, and it would make them give them the opportunity to become licensed sooner. So those are things that are very important to our economy in Florida, and there were certainly people that were very offended at the comments that were made, and quite frankly, I think it was a rookie mistake. I think it was just something that was said off the cuff, not realizing that it was going to be in print, and now that it's in print, he's got to deal with the consequences. But the one thing that we all know, you included, is, in politics, you got to sleep in the bed you make, and sometimes comments are made.
Okay. We'll take our last break, and we'll come back with one last segment with Representative Doug Holder.